So, we've got some fantastic news out of the WHL. The Edmonton Oil Kings have won the championship, and I'm gonna be honest, it's not really too much of a surprise. I mean, this team was already so stacked, they had added so many fantastic WHL names to their roster, and so taking it against the Seattle Thunderbirds and winning their series definitely is not the most shocking thing in the world. But I wanted to use this topic as an opportunity to talk about two prospects, one on the Red Wings and one on the Canadiens, both of whom played for the Oil Kings and both of whom actually played pretty well. The first was drafted in 2020 by the Montreal Canadiens. It is their big left-handed defenseman prospect, Kaden Ghoulie. The second is a guy taken the year after. He is a Red Wings goaltender prospect. It is Sebastian Cosa. In Game 6 of the WHL final series between these two squads, the Oil Kings ultimately won 2-0 with a whole bunch of shenanigans going on towards the end of the game. We had multiple hand-on-puck penalties, and we had, of course, the 2-0 result, which means that Sebastian Cosa got a shutout, and we also saw a Kaden Ghoulie goal. But overall, I wanted to talk about these two guys and their entire seasons before we actually dive into what's next. Because they won the WHL championships, they'll be heading over to the Memorial Cup, and for a lot of Montreal fans, it's kind of interesting because you do have Arbor Xhekaj, who is playing on the Hamilton Bulldogs. It's going to be interesting seeing how him and Ghoulie end off squaring off against each other. But going over to Kaden Ghoulie, I wanted to talk about this guy first because this has been a pretty good past few months for Ghoulie and his overall profile. 6'2", 201, a left-handed guy, as we said. He's already signed to his Canadiens entry-level deal. And in the postseason run for the Oil Kings, he had himself 16 points in 19 games played. Interesting to note, he had 8 goals on the entire tournament, which is great because he only had 7 goals in the 42-game sample he had in the regular season. So he already boosted his goal total. He also produced some assists as well. He was a point per game for the Oil Kings in the regular season too. And what we really started to see out of Kaden Ghoulie in this postseason run was just a lot more maturity and development in his game. We did note that he scored a goal in the Game 6 against Seattle to make it 2-0 for the Oil Kings, and this was one of the goals that you don't usually see from Ghoulie, but it's one that he honestly does a lot more than you would think. Okay, that's a weird way to say it. I'll say it like this. Ghoulie doesn't score too many goals, but a lot of goals he does score are like this, where he's at the blue line, the puck comes right to him, he holds onto it for a split second and then snaps it forward. The quick grab and release move from Ghoulie. He's got a really nice wrister, and there's a lot of velocity behind that shot. He doesn't use it often, but when he does, it usually goes in. So I think maybe as his career goes on, you might see some NHL head coaches say, hey, Kaden, start shooting more, because you actually do have a pretty good shooting ability. And it was kind of exemplified here in the postseason with his 8 goals. We also had some more good news about Kaden Ghoulie. He was awarded the Playoffs MVP award, so the Conn Smythe of the WHL was given over to Kaden Ghoulie. He had himself those points while also playing his very reliable shutdown defensive game. It's very nice just noting the two-way capabilities that Kaden Ghoulie has started to exhibit this season in the WHL. That definitely wasn't there to the same capacity in his draft season, and it was why a lot of people, myself included, were kind of skeptical upon Kaden Ghoulie and his future in the league. But now, as one of the best players in the entire gosh darn WHL and the best player in the WHL postseason, it definitely is a lot better to see Kaden Ghoulie develop the way that he has. He's still good at bodying guys along the boards, he's still great at shutting down opponents' offensive transitions, and he's got a really good mind for playing defense. His skating has improved as well, so he's a lot more nimble on his feet, I feel, compared to before. He's got a long reach, he's got some good offensive instincts as well. He's just a really good all-round player with a solid frame. And he's really started to come into his own as the season has progressed, and that just kind of puts the cherry on top, the fact that he was the playoffs MVP. And I know there's a lot of people going out there and saying, oh, when was the last time another Canadiens prospect was named the playoffs MVP for his CHL team? And I think it was Nick Suzuki, if I am remembering things correctly. If it was not Suzuki, then hey, somebody go in the comments and let me know if that is right or wrong. But Kaden Ghoulie, super great. He had an interview on TSN the other day that was 10 minutes long, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and listen to what he has to say. He's got a really mature way of talking about things. I kind of get Shea Weber vibes, to be honest, when you listen to this guy talk about his life and talk about hockey and talk about how he's improved over the past few months here or so. Sure, I'm not going to go out there and say that Kaden Ghoulie will be the next Shea Weber, but just listen to the interview and tell me you don't hear some of Captain Shea in young Kaden Ghoulie and his answers. Going over onto the goaltender, though, in Sebastian Cosa, the Red Wings prospect over here. As we said, he was taken a year later after Ghoulie, and it was interesting because Cosa was the first goaltender taken in the 2021 NHL Entry Draft after Jesper Wallstedt posted up just phenomenal numbers throughout the entire Swedish system ever since the guy was like 16. But Sebastian Cosa went earlier, the Red Wings snagged him up, and he's coming off a season where, admittedly, his numbers were not great comparative to previous years. He had a .913 save percentage in 46 games played, which is somewhat of a step down from his .941 save percentage in 19 games last year and his .921 the year before that. Despite this, though, we actually talked about this in a previous video, but if you go over to the WHL this season and you sort all of the goaltenders by save percentage, Sebastian Cosa was still 4th overall. So even though you had a pretty significant drop in production from this guy, there still were so many other goaltenders that dropped as well. It's more of a league-wide thing, seeing the goals go up and the goaltender stats go down. Year by year, it doesn't look great, but comparative to everybody else, it just kind of makes sense. In the postseason, though, Sebastian Cosa posted up a .919 save percentage and a .193 goals against average in the 19-game sample he had. He also had 5 shutouts, so really good for him to do that. He had 6 shutouts in the regular season in 46 games, so he almost matched that in half the amount of games in the playoffs. Just goes to show you, firstly, how much he stepped up once the games got important, and secondly, how good the Edmonton Oil Kings were, because that roster was absolutely stacked. Sebastian Cosa's Game 6 against Seattle, the championship-winning game, was also pretty notable too. Here's a Reddit comment on the Red Wings subreddit by Simply Solus that sums it up. Cosa only had to face 3 shots in the first period, but he ended up facing 27 shots total and came up big when the team needed it tonight. Seattle went 0 for 6 on the power play, including a bad last-minute penalty of a hand on puck by Edmonton. Then there's an interesting reply here. Oh, the hand on puck was by a Seattle player. And then Edmonton was on the power play with 5 minutes left in the game. And then they discuss further and they're like, oh, there's actually 2 puck on hand penalties that occurred in this game. 1 by each team towards the end. So it's kind of funny how that works out. WHL kids, eh? Interesting to see how that goes down. But Sebastian Cosa still goes out there and steps up big time in this WHL Cup situation, and now heading over to the Memorial Cup, we'll be seeing both of these players suit up against the other best teams in the CHL. So, if you're a Red Wings fan or a Montreal Canadiens fan, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Edmonton Oil Kings and what they did to finish off the Seattle Thunderbirds in Game 6 of their WHL Championship Series. If you're watching any of these games, hey, let me know in the comments if that is the case, if you had been paying attention to the playoff run, or if you just kind of started tuning in towards the end like I did, because you know, there's a lot of hockey going on. It's really tough to keep up with everything that transpires in this world. Obviously, I'll have the highlights on once in a while, but I hadn't really committed myself to watching too many full-length Oil Kings games this season, even though that team was just so gosh darn stacked. It's not surprising in the slightest that they went out there and won the championship. I mean, this was a championship-caliber team, and you had some championship-caliber performances. If you're a Red Wings fan, talk to me in the comments, where do you see Sebastian Cosa going with this game next? Where do you think he's going to go in 2022-2023, and how well do you think he'll perform there? If you're a Canadiens fan, same question, but for Kaden Ghoulie. We'll see what this guy does at the World Juniors in August, because he was the captain for Team Canada at the World Juniors earlier this year. It's just that tournament did not fully transpire. And then you're also going to see Kaden Ghoulie probably suit up in the AHL soon, where I do think it would be a pretty fair assumption to make that he'll play pretty alright. So, talk in the comments all your thoughts about these two prospects. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.